Argo and the Dual Narratives of the 1979 Hostage Crisis. Writer Joan Didion famously said, "We tell ourselves stories in order to live." My TED Talk today will explore the separate stories the United States and Iran tell themselves about the same incident, the 1979 hostage crisis, and how those stories allow each country to live with themselves, as it were. I'll begin by providing the bare-bones facts of the crisis, and then explore each country's narrative and how they differ. First, a brief overview of the crisis. On November 4th, 1979, several hundred Iranian students climbed the walls of the American embassy in Tehran and captured American citizens and diplomats. 52 of these Americans would be held hostage for 444 days. The students that captured the Americans were mostly medical and engineering university students and members of the group Muslim Students of the Imam Khomeini Line. They were responding to President Jimmy Carter's decision to allow the Shah into the U.S. for medical treatment. The Shah was dying of cancer. The students feared that this was a sign the U.S. was planning another coup in Iran, much like the one they had staged in 1953 to overthrow the Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, and install the Shah. They hoped to exchange the American hostages for the Shah so that they could try him. The United States version of this story is perhaps most famously captured by the 2012 Academy Award-winning film Argo, which follows Tony Mendez, a U.S. CIA specialist, as he concocts a scheme to smuggle the American hostages out of Iran by pretending they were scouting locations to shoot a science fiction movie. Though the CIA was involved in Argo's production, its narrative has been criticized the world over for its inaccuracies, not only when it comes to its portrayal of Iran and Iranians, but also when it comes to the involvement of the Canadian and British embassies in assisting the American diplomats. The hostage crisis remains a painful memory for Americans. Many historians believe it cost Jimmy Carter the second term of his presidency. The U.S. said the capture of diplomatic workers was a violation of the Vienna Convention, and it had a lasting effect on diplomatic relations in the Middle East. Argo did not sit well with the Iranian government. In March of 2013, Iranian officials announced that they planned to sue Hollywood filmmakers for contributing to the production of anti-Iran propaganda films. They consulted French lawyer Isabelle Couton-Pere, who said, quote, "I will defend Iran against the films like Argo, which are produced in Hollywood to distort the country's image," end quote. The same year, Iran announced that it would fund the production of a film meant to correct Argo's narrative. The film was titled The General Staff and would tell the story of a different group of American diplomats that were released to the U.S. as a humanitarian gesture. Neither the lawsuit nor the General Staff film came to fruition, however, and Iranian officials said in 2015 that they were not worth pursuing. Saeed Kamali-Dagan, The Guardian's Iranian correspondent, criticized Argo for its black-and-white portrayal of Iranians, saying the film portrays its Iranian characters as ugly, poor, strictly religious, fanatical, and ignorant. Dagan describes being taught at school that the hostage-taking was an act of resistance, quote, "heroism on behalf of revolutionaries showing their anger at U.S. interference in Iran's internal affairs," end quote. The students that captured the hostages were hoping to break with Iran's past and pave the way for a future free from American interference in their government. Members of the student group have said that nothing would have happened had the U.S. not taken in the Shah. Some have said 30 years after the incident that they felt exploited by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini and that the crisis would not have lasted so long without Khomeini's influence. The students were part of Khomeini's power struggle for control of Iran's oil revenues, control he hoped would allow him to fund other conflicts. Some of the hostage-takers now work to reform the repressive culture in Iran that became Khomeini's legacy. The legacy of the hostage crisis lives on as tension and distrust between the U.S. and Iran have grown through terse nuclear talks and assassinations. These dual narratives, the United States and Iran's, have provided an unsteady foundation for peace between the countries. When two sides cannot agree on one narrative, how effective can we expect diplomacy to be?